Ladies and gentlemen, America's first baby boomer and most recent retiree, Kathy Casey Kirschling. Congratulations.
It was great.
Over the next 2 decades, Social Security expects that nearly 80 million Americans will file for retirement.
Talked about, debated about. Now it's here. The baby boomer retirement crisis. Every day, 10,000 people with that generational nickname are hitting retirement age of 65. And finances are forcing people to either retire early or work well past the age of being able to relax. Proper decisions made now, right now, will ensure more than just a living past 65, but living well. There are 2 people that have honed in on making certain every baby boomer, and even those generations that follow, understand in plain English what can be done to prepare and succeed past 65. First up, he's the deputy health editor here at Newsmax, and every time we have something that needs explanation, we turn to him. An award-winning journalist, author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Obamacare Survival Guide, and co-author of the book we'll focus on here, DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide, Nick Tate. Also, his co-author, who knows more about finances than plenty of those who count the cash, founder of the foreign exchange forecasting firm Rockefeller Treasury Services, noted author on financial topics with more than 20 years of financial institution experience, Barbara Rockefeller. All right, Nick, I welcome you. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us as well.
Thanks.
All right, Nick, let's go ahead and start out with you here in the studio. Why decide to write a book? What made this the time to do it?
Well, I think we were surprised to find out how little people know about just the basics of retirement planning. Everything from when to take Social Security and the fact that delaying it by even a couple years can dramatically increase your payments by tens of thousands of dollars over time. How the ins and outs of savings and investment, what you really need to know, what you really need to do. Very simple things that people just don't know. And so we thought with 4 million boomers retiring about every year for the next couple decades, we needed to provide a guidebook that lets them walk through those things and make a plan.
Barbara, what were the financial issues that you noticed right away that when you start thinking about this, you said, these are the things that people need to understand, and I guess understand in English as well, because that's always what the general public does. Don't hand me a lot of facts and figures. Basically break it down for me and make it simple.
Well, the first thing is that so you cannot live on Social Security. The average amount is $1,200 a month, and even if you live in a trailer in the Ozarks, you can't live on $1,200 a month. So you really are supposed to have saved, and baby boomers failed to save. That was our big shortcoming. We never expected that we would get here and have so little savings.
It seems to me that as we look at a lot of these numbers here and we see these simple basics here to increase the Social Security payment, choosing the reliable investments, easy to set up a trust. It just seems to me that many people retiring here, they always had confidence in Medicare and Social Security that would cover their basic needs in retirement. Barbara, to you first of all on this, when people think about that and that's what they knew, when do you think we finally got to that point where people were starting to understand, wait a minute, this is all wrong, I'm going to need more?
Well, it's happening right now, which is why the book is a timely addition to the discussion. I think that people call Social Security the third rail of American politics. And the likelihood of it going away or being privatized or something like that is not very realistic because we know we need it. What we're only just starting to acknowledge is that, number one, the trust fund will run out of money. Granted, that's decades away, but more people are retiring than are joining the workforce to pay for us. And as a consequence, taxes will have to go up, not on us, not on the retirees, but on the workers, or benefits will have to be cut. My vote would be that benefits will not be cut, or if they are cut, they're cut in very selective ways, like some of the Medicare cuts that Nick can talk about. But still, we have a sense of uneasiness, not necessarily crisis, but uneasiness over what's developing.
We got about 30 seconds before I take a break, and on MidPoint, we always say question everything. That's going to be a key in this book, too. Question everything.
That's right. I mean, what we try to do is there are important questions that boomers need to ask in terms of retirement, and we try to provide some answers. When is the best time to retire to really maximize your income? Should you continue to live in your home? Should you indeed continue to live in the place where you have lived your whole life, maybe? Or should you move to another state that has a better tax situation? How do you know you're not going to outlive your money? Boomers are going to be the longest lived generation position in history, and how do you plan for your health care? These are some of the questions that we answer in the book.
All right, now short break and we're back to zero in on money and how boomers can protect and improve their financial situation. Let's dive deeper into DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide with co-authors Nick Tate and Barbara Rockefeller. Quite frankly, it's simple, plain English that everybody needs to hear and understand. That's on this special edition of MidPoint. Here's a frightening thought. Millions of baby boomers are retiring and many have no assets or very little savings. A recent Wells Fargo study revealed a third of the middle class believes Social Security will be their primary source of income. Other research points to 3/4 of boomers 55 and older having set aside less than $30,000. One way to seek solutions is our focus here, DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide. So let's go ahead and welcome back, first of all in the studio, co-author Nick Tate, and joining us via Skype, co-author Barbara Rockefeller. Barbara, we're going to start with you because let's get down to some money here, and that's your area of expertise. I talked about Social Security here, and many people thought that's going to be the answer, but it just seems to me that that's a foolish idea to think that you can rely on the income from Social Security anymore.
Well, Social Security was never intended to be anything other than a supplement. You were supposed to have some savings of your own, and the savings were supposed to be your primary source of income in your retirement years. You're supposed to have a pension from an employer or savings or both. Social Security was always intended to be a stopgap to prevent the extreme poverty that older people had in the 1930s. That was why it was started in the first place. So we have the wrong perspective on Social Security in the first place. We're expecting more from it than it's actually going to deliver.
Now,
having said that, it's never too late to start saving and to start accumulating some capital of your own.
that's going to be the next step here because, correct me again if I'm wrong, but the applicants, you can actually increase your Social Security payments because you can be smart about when to start collecting your benefits. This is not really a fixed number, fixed income, correct?
Yes, and in fact, the increase, the longer you wait, the more you get on a monthly basis, and then therefore on a cumulative basis, the more you would get. And it's actually pretty shocking. If you choose to take your payout when you're 62, you will get as much as 25% less than if you can wait until you're 70.
The biggest thing here that I
Assuming you
often
don't
hear...
think you're going to die.
No, I'm sorry, please finish.
No, if you're in extremely ill health and likely to die right after age 70, then obviously you're going to take it at 62. So evaluating when you're going to take it, 62, 66, or 70, is a function of how healthy you are and how long you want to live. And a lot of people don't want to face that. And yet there's a ton of websites out there, all of which we name in the book, and several places, in fact, of figuring out how long are you going to live. People don't want to face that question. That's a very hard thing to face. When am I going to die?
I think that's part of it from a medical standpoint.
Sure.
Certainly is.
Right.
We don't know. It's all those questions that we still have to ask ourselves. We're unsure. So we're afraid sometimes to make some of these moves.
We are, but the truth is, if you look at the actuarial tables, I mean, life expectancy now is in the high 70s for men, the low 80s for women. If you are 50 years of age right now, you have a better than average chance of living to your mid 80s. And a lot of the retirement planning recommendations that have made up to this point have expected retirement would be 10 or 15, maybe 20 years. But the truth is that the fastest growing segment of the population is that over 65 segment. So the expectation is that many people are going to live to their 80s and 90s and beyond, and you need to have a financial plan that goes beyond Social Security for that.
All right, let's go beyond that Social Security that you just talked about here. Barbara, there's this 4% rule of retirement planning. What exactly is that?
Well, the 4% rule is considered outdated today. It was based upon your having started to invest in the stock market, and basically the Standard & Poor's index, something like that when you were young, and over 40 years, 30 to 40 years, at an annual rate of growth of 8 to 12%, you would have accumulated enough money so that by the time you were 65, you could withdraw 4% of it a year and never run out of money. The problem is, number one, as we've said, people didn't start doing this, putting away significant amounts of money in their 30s. And the other problem is we have had these crashes which do come along. The 4% assumption assumes no crashes, but we have had crashes. We had the 99 tech wreck, we had a big crash in '08, and so you can't count on the 8 to 12% steady annual growth rate that will yield you as much as 4% total ability to withdraw, as much as 4% per annum when you are retired. That means that you could, plus the fact that you're going to live those extra 30 years and not just 15, means you are almost certainly going to run out of money by the time you're 80 or something.
The one thing that I'm hearing coming through in a lot of this, Barbara, and we've only got a few seconds left here, but the word is options, correct?
You mean trading options?
Sure,
Well,
no, yeah, people need options. People are looking for options. They need to consider all their options instead of just looking at one thing.
Yes, but the very first thing you have to do is accumulate some capital. You have to do some plain old-fashioned savings, passbook savings, the kind of thing you did when you were 8 and your birthday gift was $5 and your dad took you down to the bank to put it in a savings account. The safest place to put your money is in a federally insured bank. The problem, of course, is that you make almost no return on it.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to hold right there because we have to take a break and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more because let's turn to housing and living conditions that boomers need to think about after the break. And a reminder, get your copy of DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide online at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, other bookstores across the country. It's the best $20 you'll ever invest and get a solid life in retirement.
One of the things that is key is that despite the fact that close to 70% of people feel like they'll either run out of money or not have enough to live on day to day in retirement, 40% of people today are either not saving for retirement or significantly reduce their savings for retirement. And that is going to create a shortfall for millions of people, as much as a fifth when they actually do get to retirement.
It's all about your retirement, making certain you have the right amount of money in investments to make it the very best it can be. Start with DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide because 65 is still considered young in our culture, and with people living into their 90s, this is material that has never been more important. Let's get back to the co-authors who make it easy to understand how to face and overcome a retirement crisis. First of all, Nick Tate is author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Obamacare Survival Guide, and the economic whiz of the duo that joins us, Barbara Rockefeller. All right, let's go ahead and start in the studio here with you, Nick. Let's focus down a little bit here on the fact that people need to improve their home situation, but they have to learn is saving, increasing the income after they retire. Wait a minute, I rarely hear that. People think retire, stop.
Right.
Maybe a couple of investments, but they've got to figure out money that's coming in afterwards.
That's right. Saving for retirement is really only half of the equation. You need to figure out how to increase your income, continue to boost your nest egg after retirement, because you're going to need to continue living, and as we just found out in the prior segment, Social Security is not going to cover all your expenses. Healthcare costs are going up. One place you can turn to, and in fact it's a great source of wealth for most boomers, is your home. If you own your home, if you're renting a home, it can be a foundation for financial opportunity. It does cost. You have to pay a mortgage, rent, property taxes, utilities, and all that good stuff. But a home also gives you some security. You can sell your home in retirement and downsize and use that the savings there to continue to grow your nest egg. You can turn to a home equity line of credit, even if you don't use one. To have it gives you that additional security should you need it for an emergency. And then finally, there's a question of reverse mortgages, which are tricky. But for many Americans, many boomers, they do provide another financial lifeline. So the home really can be a foundation for building, growing, and continuing to increase your wealth in retirement.
All right, Barbara, I'm going to turn to you now because on the money side of things here, every time we see something like this, we see homes, we see equities, the first thing that comes to my mind immediately is there's got to be taxes involved in here somewhere because that's going to hit you sooner or later.
Well, you have to be careful not to let the tax tail wag the dog. If you're making a substantially good return on something, then you shouldn't object to paying taxes as long as they're not punitive and excessive. So I would say that getting a decent rate of return that's at least higher than the rate of inflation should be the goal. And to get more of it, we're just simply not saving enough or demanding enough return on the investments that we do have.
Now, we're talking taxes, so let's talk about downsides here, because we're seeing a graphic right now that tells us property costs are often very inexpensive. Some states have no income tax. What about the negatives on this, Barbara?
Well, you have to trade off all the taxes, because you may have a state that has low income tax or no income tax but property taxes are very high, or they have a sales tax instead of an income tax. And so there is a trade-off. And we do have a table in the book that shows some of these trade-offs. The states that don't have income taxes, for example, do tend to have high property taxes.
Now, Nick, you'd mentioned, and I want to get to reverse mortgages, but
Yes.
you had a comment before that?
I was just going to say, there really is, one of the points we make in the book is there really is no one-size-fits-all solution. You can look at low-income, states that have no income tax, Florida, Texas, Nevada, for instance, and you have to balance them against the quality of health care in those places. What kinds of amenities are offered to seniors? Are there a great deal of senior services? Are there living situations, whether you're selling your house in New York and moving to Florida, to give one example, are there living situations that are better for you in Florida? So it's really the total picture. I think what Barbara and I are talking about is that when you're going through the options, you need to weigh the pluses and the minuses, and we walk through the pros and cons: taxes, property costs, housing costs, et cetera, et cetera.
All right, now, Barbara, we always hear a lot about, and there's a million commercials out there right now that always talk about how wonderful reverse mortgages are, how they're easy, how they'll make you a lot of money. And I've actually talked to some people who said, gee, that's a great idea. Look at all the money I can make. All right, give us the reality then of reverse mortgages and how that works in all this.
Well, a lot of the abuses that occurred when reverse mortgages first came on the scene have now been rectified because the federal government stepped in and said, you can't cheat people like this. There was a lot of cheating going on. However, there are some important problems. One is that you have to live in the house, which means that if you get sick and you have to move to some kind of an assisted living thing, then right away the bank wants to come and take your house. That is a cause of not exactly foreclosure, but you have now broken the contract and you owe all the money back. The second thing is that it makes life very complicated for your heirs. And again, we have to think about the fact that we will die at some point. And the reverse mortgage makes the whole probate process with respect to the house very complicated. The third thing is that the rates can be very high. So if the average mortgage rate today is 4.5% or whatever it is, then a reverse mortgage rate can be on the order of 10%. So you have to be very careful and read the fine print, look at the numbers, do the arithmetic. And overall, that is something that baby boomers have been unwilling to do. They've been a little bit reckless in terms of rushing into things without reading the fine print.
All right, now, we're not going to be reckless here in about the minute or so that we have left before we take a break. When we tell people, Nick, that the thing that you must realize from all this, and what I'm getting from all this is, one size does not fit all.
That's
Used to
correct.
be people would think, hey, retirement, we can all move in and go this way. You can't do that anymore. There's too many things to consider here.
That's right. It's really a situation where you must become a savvy consumer. You can't rely on the government. You can't rely on your financial planner. You really have to become educated. You have to become savvy. And, you know, reverse mortgages for some people, they're fine, but they are tricky. There are pitfalls. You need to know what they are. What works for you may not work for me, and that's why we all need to become more savvy consumers. And of course, one of the ways you do that is read, become educated. You can read books. You can follow television programs on financial planning. There's a wealth of resources out there, but you have to get involved. The first step is become educated.
And you can't simply rely on one person. I know you mentioned that we don't want to hammer away at financial individuals here or get involved in helping your financial advice, but you need to take that, you need to balance that against other things, get all the opinions, and that's what's in the book, really, a tremendous amount of opinions.
That's right.
And facts.
Well, we did go to who we think are the experts here, and we did collect a variety of really good pieces of advice. We did our own research, but we talked to some folks who are really tops in their field too. But again, the point is, we're giving you information you can use to live better and longer.
All right, we're going to tell you a little bit more about how to live better, how to live longer, how to make it all work, because the book itself is the DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide. Break, and we're back with this special one-hour edition of MidPoint here on Newsmax. Healthcare and what boomers and retirees not only need to know, but must have ready before they hit the magic age of 65. The DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide, our guideline, right here. Healthcare. Makes no difference who you are, where you live, what your job is, or what your current state of health is. Every single person needs to make it a top concern and a priority for the future. The book is DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide. Speaking the language almost 80 million baby boomers here in America need to understand and also put to good use. Let's welcome back the co-authors. Nick Tate is here in studio. Barbara Rockefeller joins us via Skype. Barbara, let's turn to you a little bit about all those medical bills, because you can have everything ready, you can have it all in your mind, but the costs are going to rise. There are going to be more and more money that you've got to pay out. You've got to be ready and maybe even consider the health care costs you might not be able to pay. You've got to be ready for the worst case scenario.
Absolutely. And this is the problem. The chief cause of bankruptcy of everybody in the economy, but especially older people, it's a higher ratio for older people, is an unforeseen emergency medical expense that wipes out 100,000, 200,000, enormous amounts of money that is not covered by insurance or in the case of retirees, by Medicare. And that's the problem. You sort of don't know how much you should have saved or should be saving because you don't know how much these catastrophic events might end up costing.
That's another one of those options that we have to talk about here, Nick, is because when it comes to Medicare, you've got to have the options. That's what the book really goes well into detail is because I don't think people sometimes are aware of a lot of those options.
Right, and they're tricky. For a lot of seniors on Medicare, picking a plan is really complicated. If you live in a state like Florida, you may have 100 different plans to choose from just for your prescription drug coverage. So walking people through that process and demystifying it is a big part of the book. Let me just give you one statistic. 26% of seniors on Medicare will exhaust all of their assets and all of their savings in just the last few months of years of life in out-of-pocket costs for health care. That is, costs that go above and beyond what Medicare covers. That's a number that really surprises folks. That's millions of people who are for whom the cost of dying really exceeds a lifetime of savings. So it's really important to pick a solid Medicare plan. Medicare is also changing because of the Affordable Care Act and because of new health care reforms that are going to continue to take place for at least another decade or more. So understanding the ins and outs of your health care dollar, maximizing your health care dollar, and making sure that you're financially set from a healthcare perspective as we live ever longer is going to be really important.
You and I have talked about this an awful lot, but here it comes again, those simple words, healthy living.
Yes.
Because as you get older, you have to take better care of yourself, and it's so simple for so many people to do.
Right.
That it just seems very logical, common sense.
It really is. I mean, the best healthcare plan is one that has you not interacting with the healthcare system too much. The way to do that, we know some of the basics: eating a healthy diet, getting exercise every day, quitting smoking. But we go deeper than that. It's more than that. We identify proven ways to lower your risk for developing Alzheimer's or dementia. We're talking about new alternative medicine strategies that science shows actually make a difference in enhancing your life in older age. And the new science of genetics offers the opportunity for you to now be tested to find out what you might be predisposed to in terms of cancer and other diseases, which can then allow you to make changes to compensate for those natural predispositions. We also do lay out a kind of decade-by-decade list of screening tests that you should do above the age of 40 for men and for women, things that you absolutely should do so that if you do develop cancer, heart disease, or diabetes, it's caught early when it can be treated and even cured.
The one thing, though, that I think we point out in a lot of this is it's never too late.
Right.
I mean, certainly, you just talked about people over 40. We're talking about the boomers right here now, 55 and over, reaching that age of 65.
Right.
Even if you're in your 40s,
Right.
the book itself will give you some of those simple guidelines. It's not a diet book. We're not telling you how to set your diet here, but at least how to think about living a little healthier so you don't, as you said, and put it perfectly, you don't have to get involved with the medical system in the first place.
That's the goal, is to stay healthy and live healthy up until the point that, you're gone. That's really the goal. The thing that I would point out here is, we've talked about it before, 65 really is the new 40. Now, the boomers are living longer, but the boomers are also living a healthier and a more active life and expect to live a healthier, more active life. I see people my own age and older, and we don't think of ourselves as older people, and I don't think we ever will, and there's no reason why you should as long as you remain active. And it's not just about health, but it's staying active in terms of maintaining active social lives, connections with friends and family. For many people who retire, retirement, in fact, becomes a new way to grow, building new careers, new hobbies, new experiences, keeping the mind alive, which is critically important. So we do, it's a financial planner, it's a healthcare guide, but we also try to provide some smart strategies for healthy living, too.
All right, we got more to talk about on that side. Stick around for a couple minutes here because there are plenty more health and financial benefits to be gleaned from DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide, and we'll cover those on the other side of the break. The DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide is the guide for people who want to retire and live a good, prosperous, and healthy life for many, many years. Hey, why not? It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online bookstores across the country. Maybe the best $20 you'll ever spend. All right, back to work as we dive into DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide. It's available on Amazon and bookstores across the country. Now, there's plenty of things for retirees to think about. Lifestyle, maintain the income, health care, you name it. So let's go ahead and welcome back the co-authors. Nick Tate joins us here in studio. Barbara Rockefeller joins us via Skype. Barbara, hang on just a minute. I'm going to get to you in a moment. I'm going to start with Nick in this one here because simple question here. Number one thing that retirees got to think about right off the bat.
In a word, it's money. I mean, money gives
What a
you,
shock.
It really gives you the opportunity to it determines where you live, how healthy you can be. It really is the factor. And we know one of the reasons we're going to be facing this huge retirement crisis is that only 1 in 4 boomers has saved enough for retirement and to live comfortably in retirement. At the same time, we know that we're living longer than any other generation in history. So the likelihood that we will outlive our savings is pretty good for a significant number, millions of Americans.
Barbara, is that a little surprising? I mean, we've got some very intelligent people in this country, and people certainly are aware that they're eventually going to retire. They're eventually going to need some money here. But the fact that they just don't seem to be that prepared at this point, I mean, that's why you wrote the book, certainly. It's a way to get them prepared, but the fact that they're not is a little bit mystifying, I guess.
Well, my theory is that the 60s generation was just hopelessly optimistic and always believed that something good was going to happen at some point that would take care of this. It's an unrealistic and even delusional way of looking at the future. Things can only get better. Well, that's not necessarily true. Things can get worse.
Let's go ahead then to the two phrases, Medicare, or the two names, if you will, Medicare and Social Security. Barbara, let's go ahead and tell people straight out, the old days of relying on these two things, over. Don't go any farther. Done, right?
Yes, I agree.
So then why do we still have to tell them that? I mean, other than the fact that they're still that they're so optimistic here, because people still feel that these things are there and they're going to live forever.
Well, I think the cure for the delusional idea that you can live on Social Security and Medicare is to go to the Social Security website, no matter how old you are, if you're 30 or 50 or 60, go to the Social Security website, which is easy enough to find, and input your information, and it will tell you exactly what your payout is going to be if you take your benefits at 62, 66, or 70. And that should be a bucket of cold water on people if they compare that number to their expenses today. One of the important things is that Medicare or Social Security payments go up, or they're adjusted for a cost of living that is the general consumer wage earners' cost of living, the thing that's published in the newspaper every month. But in fact, cost of living for older people, for retired people, is in fact much higher. And it's a significant amount, and that is due, of course, to the cost of medicine and medical care. And so you have to adjust your expectations about how much money you're going to need, again, by the cost of that medical care. And once you do that, then it's the bucket of cold water, because you don't have.
Got about a minute left here. Go ahead and answer that.
I have a theory about why boomers have been dragging their feet on this. Remember Pete Townshend's famous line from The Who's My Generation, hope I die before I get old. I mean, this is a generation that has revered youth, and I think that for a lot of folks, looking deep into the future has been kind of a difficult thing. We think of ourselves as young people and continue to think of ourselves. Don't want to think about what happens when we get old, but the truth is, if you don't, that phrase, hope I die before I get old, could take on kind of a chilling new meaning. And I think as boomers continue to be optimistic about the future, they also have to become realistic about the future, too.
Well, that's also why it's not just boomers here, but people who are in their 20s can benefit from this right now, because people in their 20s feel they will live forever, probably more than the people who now are in their 50s and 60s.
That's true. And, the truth is that the boomers will live a more youthful seniordom and into old age than any other generation if they're smart about the choices that they make. And, I'm hopeful about that. I think we can preserve that optimism and that dreamer quality that, as Barbara says, is exactly right. It's a quality of this generation.
All right, stand by. We got one more to go before we go ahead and close things out here. Now, the book is called DaVinci's Baby Boomer Survival Guide, a comprehensive examination and discussion of what every person hitting the retirement age of 65, or as we just mentioned, even those much younger, must know in order to be ready for the kickback years. Back with more from the co-authors, Nick Tate and Barbara Rockefeller, as we look into how to survive in those baby boomer years.